Commander Hyon Taman stared at the screens in front of him. Something was wrong. Very wrong. The numbers dancing across his monitors made no sense at all. He had been watching space for 15 years from Luna Station, and he had never seen anything like this. "Computer, run the scan again," he said, his voice steady despite the cold fear growing in his chest. The machine beeped and whirred. The same impossible readings appeared on his screen. Massive objects were moving toward Earth from deep space. They were big, really big, and they were moving faster than anything humans had ever built. Taman reached for his coffee cup, but his hand was shaking. He put it down and called his team. "Nari, get up here now," he said into his communicator. "Bring the deep space analysis kit." Dr. Nari So-Young arrived 10 minutes later, still wearing her lab coat. She was Earth's best expert on alien life, though until today, that had been mostly theoretical work. She studied the possibility of life on other worlds. She had written books about how first contact with aliens would probably be peaceful and wonderful. "What do you have?" she asked, settling into the chair next to him. Taman pointed at the screen. 200 objects. Each one is about the size of a small moon. They're coming from outside our solar system, and they're coming fast. Nari's face went pale. She ran the numbers through her own computer. "This can't be right. Nothing moves that fast through space, nothing that big." "Keep looking," Taman said. "Tell me I'm wrong." She worked for an hour, checking and rechecking. Finally, she looked up at him with wide, frightened eyes. "You're not wrong. These things are real. They're artificial. And they'll be here in 72 hours. Across the solar system, Captain Jinwoo Minhyuk was sleeping in his quarters aboard the UES Indomitable when the emergency alarm started screaming. He rolled out of bed and grabbed his uniform, already knowing this wasn't a drill. Drills didn't happen at 3 in the morning. The bridge was chaos when he arrived. Officers were running everywhere, and everyone was talking at once. His first officer, Lieutenant Park, met him at the door. "Sir, we just got orders from Earth Command. There's something coming. Something big." Jinwoo took his place in the captain's chair and looked at the main screen. The tactical display showed the approaching objects as red dots. Lots of red dots. "How many?" he asked. 200 confirmed contacts, sir. They're not responding to any communication attempts." Jinwoo felt his stomach drop. The Indomitable was humanity's most advanced warship, built with the best technology Earth could create. But looking at those red dots, he suddenly felt like he was commanding a rowboat in a hurricane. "Get me Earth Command," he ordered. "Admiral!" Byung-ho Kangmin's face appeared on the screen a few seconds later. The old man looked tired and worried. Behind him, Jinwoo could see dozens of people working frantically. "Captain, how fast can you get back to Earth?" the Admiral asked. 18 hours at maximum burn, sir. Do it. We're ordering a full evacuation of the outer colonies. Every ship we have is heading home." "Sir, what exactly are we dealing with?" The Admiral was quiet for a long moment. "We don't know, Captain. But whatever they are, they're not trying to talk to us." On Luna Station, Taman and So-Young were working around the clock, trying to learn everything they could about the approaching fleet. Engineer Do-Hyun Seojin had joined them, along with every other scientist and military officer on the station. "Look at this," Seojin said, pointing to his computer screen. "I've been analyzing their movement patterns. They're not just moving fast. They're moving in perfect formation. Every ship is exactly where it should be. No mistakes. No corrections." "What does that mean?" Taman asked. "It means they've done this before," So-Young said quietly. "A lot of times. They spent the next day trying to contact the alien fleet. They sent radio signals, laser communications, and mathematical sequences. They tried everything humans had ever thought to use for first contact. The aliens didn't respond to any of it. As the hours passed, more details became clear. The alien ships were huge, made of some kind of crystal-like material that reflected sensor beams in strange ways. They had no visible weapons, but they were. Clearly military vessels. Everything about them suggested power, order, and terrible purpose. "They're not explorers," So-Young said during one of their brief breaks. "They're not scientists or traders or diplomats. These are warships." "How can you be sure?" Seo-Jin asked. "Because if they wanted to talk, they would have answered us by now." On Earth, panic was starting to spread. The government had tried to keep the approaching fleet secret, but the truth was getting out. People were leaving the cities, heading for bunkers and shelters that had been built during earlier wars. The roads were packed with cars and trucks, carrying families and everything they could grab. Captain Min-hyuk arrived at Earth with his small fleet, just as the alien ships reached the edge of the solar system. He watched from the bridge of the Indomitable as they dropped out of faster-than-light travel in perfect synchronization. "My God," his weapons officer whispered. "Look at the size of them." Each alien ship was a work of art and terror. They looked like they had been grown rather than built, with smooth curves and crystal spires that caught the light of the sun. But there was something cold about them. Something that spoke of death and endings. "All ships, this is Captain Min-hyuk," he said into his communicator. "Form up on the Indomitable. We're going to try to make contact." His small fleet of 20 ships moved toward the aliens. They were dwarfed by the massive crystal vessels, like ants approaching elephants. But they were all Earth had. "Open a channel on all frequencies," Min-hyuk ordered. "Channel open, sir." "Unknown vessels, this is Captain Jin-woo Min-hyuk of the United Earth Defense Force. Please respond. We wish to communicate with you." Silence. They tried for an hour, sending every kind of signal they could think of. The aliens continued their approach toward Earth, ignoring the human ships completely. Then something changed. Energy readings spiked across all the alien vessels. Weapon ports opened along their hulls like blooming flowers of destruction. "Sir," his tactical officer shouted, "they're charging weapons." "All ships, fall back," Min-hyuk ordered. "Get between them and Earth." But even as his ships moved to intercept, he knew it was hopeless. They had 20 ships against 200, fusion drives against technology that could cross the galaxy, kinetic weapons against energy shields that bent space itself. The aliens had come without warning. They had ignored every attempt at communication. They had only one purpose, and Min-hyuk could see it in the way their weapons turned toward his tiny fleet. They had come to destroy everything. The first shot came without warning. A beam of pure energy reached across space from the lead alien ship and turned the UES Defender into a ball of fire. Captain Min-hyuk watched in horror as 300 of his people died in an instant. All. "Ships, scatter!" he shouted into his communicator. "Don't cluster together!" The alien fleet spread out like a net of death. Their crystal ships moved with impossible grace, each one taking position with mathematical precision. Within minutes, they had surrounded the small human fleet. Admiral Cale Thornspire stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching the primitive vessels try to escape. This was his 47th planetary cleansing, and it would be his easiest. The local species had barely mastered fusion power. Their weapons were laughably weak. Their ships moved like drunken animals compared to his graceful fleet. "Begin the harvest protocol," he commanded. His voice was cold and emotionless, like winter wind through dead trees. The Valthon Empire had been destroying young civilizations for 3,000 years. It was efficient work. Find a world with useful resources. Remove the native population. Strip the planet clean. Move on to the next target. These humans were no different from the others. They would die just as easily. But Commander Taman had spent his career studying old battles, and he knew something about fighting impossible odds. As the human ships scattered, he was already thinking 3 moves ahead. All ships, this is Luna. Command, he broadcast on a secure channel. Execute dispersal pattern Omega. Every ship becomes a sensor station. Share all targeting data. The human fleet split apart like dandelion seeds in the wind. Instead of trying to fight as a group, each ship became the eyes and ears for all the others. When one ship detected an alien weapon signature, every other ship knew about it instantly. Captain Minhyuk understood the plan. The humans couldn't win a straight fight, but they could learn. Every alien shot, every movement, every tactical decision was being recorded and analyzed. Weapons officer, target the smallest ship, he ordered. Full spread of missiles. Sir, our weapons won't even scratch their shields. I know. Do it anyway. The Indomitable fired everything it had at a Valthon destroyer. The missiles exploded harmlessly against the aliens' energy shields, doing no damage at all, but the attack served its purpose. The human sensors recorded exactly how those shields worked, how much energy they absorbed, and how they reacted to different types of weapons. Engineer Seojin was watching the battle from Luna Station, his computers analyzing every piece of data the scattered fleet was sending back. He was starting to see patterns in the alien technology. The shields pulse, he said to Dr. So-young, who was working beside him. Look at this. Every time they absorb energy, there's a tiny gap in the field, just for a few milliseconds. Can we exploit it? Maybe. If we could coordinate our attacks perfectly, time them to hit during those gaps. It was a desperate plan. But desperation was all they had left. Admiral Thornspire was growing annoyed. The human ships were taking far longer to destroy than expected. They scattered every time his fleet tried to corner them, like insects avoiding a boot. And they kept, attacking even when their weapons did nothing. Why do they persist? Asked his tactical officer. Their resistance is meaningless. All species fight before they die, Thornspire replied. It changes nothing. But something was changing. The human attacks were becoming more coordinated. Instead of firing randomly, they were timing their shots, concentrating their fire on single targets. Lieutenant Colonel Isol Gayung commanded a squadron of fighters based on Earth's moon. She had been watching the battle, waiting for her chance. When the call came from Luna Command, she was ready. All fighters, this is Gayung. We're going to try something crazy. Form up on me. Her squadron of 30 small fighters launched from their hidden base inside a lunar crater. They were tiny compared to the massive alien ships, small enough that the Valthon sensors barely noticed them at first. Target is the damaged destroyer, Gayung announced. Seojin's calculations show a shield gap every 12 seconds. We have exactly 2.3 seconds to get our shots through. The fighters streaked across space toward their target. The Valthon destroyer had been taking constant fire from the human fleet for 20 minutes. Its shields were functioning, but they were working hard to absorb all the incoming energy. Weapons hot, Gayung called. Wait for my mark. Mark! 30 fighters fired their missiles at exactly the same instant. The timing was perfect. The destroyer's shields had just absorbed a barrage from the Indomitable, creating the predicted gap. 28 missiles exploded harmlessly against the ship's hull, but 2 found their mark. The alien ship shuddered and listed to one side. Green fluid leaked from the hull breaches, freezing instantly in the vacuum of space. For the first time in 3,000 years, the Valthon Empire had lost a ship to a primitive species. Admiral Thornspire stared at his tactical display in disbelief. The destroyed ship's icon blinked red, then disappeared. Impossible. These creatures barely understood quantum mechanics, yet they had destroyed a ship of the line. How? He demanded. His tactical officer was frantically reviewing the sensor data. They coordinated their attack patterns, sir. Somehow they discovered our shield harmonics and exploited the refresh cycle. In 20 minutes? Yes, sir. Thornspire felt something he had not experienced in centuries. Doubt. These humans were adapting faster than his computer models predicted. They were learning from every exchange, turning each defeat into knowledge. Dr. So-Young was analyzing the wreckage of the destroyed alien ship when she made a discovery that changed everything. The ship wasn't just advanced technology, it was grown technology. The hull was made of living crystal that could repair itself. The weapons were biological constructs that adapted to their targets. They're not just using advanced science, she told Taemin over the communicator. They're using synthetic biology. Their ships are alive. What does that mean for us? It means they follow biological rules as well as physical ones, and biological systems can be poisoned, infected, or tricked. The battle continued for 6 more hours. The human fleet lost 18 ships, but they destroyed 2 more alien vessels. More importantly, they learned something from every exchange. They mapped the alien formation patterns, weapon systems, and tactical responses. Engineer Seojin had been working without sleep, turning Luna Station into a massive research laboratory. Every piece of alien technology, every energy signature, every tactical pattern was being fed into his computers. "I've got something," he announced to the command center. "Their ships communicate through quantum entanglement. Perfect coordination, but it makes them predictable. If we can disrupt the signal..." "How?" Taemin asked. "We need to get close to their command ship. Really close." Captain Min-hyuk volunteered for the suicide mission. The Indomitable was the most advanced ship in the human fleet, and it had the best chance of surviving long enough to get close to the alien flagship. "Understood, Luna Command," he said. "We'll make the run." As the Indomitable began its desperate approach toward the massive Velthon command ship, Min-hyuk thought about the people they were trying to save. 65 billion humans on Earth, all depending on this one desperate gamble. The alien ships moved to intercept him, their weapons charging. Energy beams lanced through space, barely missing his ship. The Indomitable's shields flared and sparked. "Under the assault." "Distance to target?" Min-hyuk called out. 15,000 kilometers and closing, sir." The flagship loomed ahead of them, a crystal mountain floating in space. Its weapons were bigger than most human ships, and they were all turning toward the Indomitable. "All crew, brace for impact," Min-hyuk announced. "We're going to try something that's never been done before." He was right about that. No one had ever rammed a Valthon command ship before. But there was a first time for everything, and humanity was about to teach the galaxy that sometimes the most primitive solution was the most effective one. The Indomitable never reached the alien flagship. At 5,000 kilometers, the Velthon weapons finally found their mark. Captain Min-hyuk had just enough time to eject the ship's data core before his vessel became an expanding cloud of metal and plasma, but his sacrifice accomplished something the aliens didn't expect. The data core contained a virus that Engineer Seojin had designed based on what they had learned about Valthon communication systems. When the aliens salvaged the wreckage, The virus spread through their quantum network like wildfire. For exactly 17 minutes, the mighty Velthon fleet was blind and deaf. Ships collided with each other, weapons fired at their own forces. The perfect coordination that had made them unstoppable was replaced by chaos. It wasn't enough to defeat them, but it was enough to buy Earth precious time. Admiral Thornspire restored order to his fleet, but the damage was done. 3 more ships had been destroyed in the confusion, and his faith in Velthon's superiority was shaken. These humans were proving to be far more dangerous than his intelligence reports had suggested. "Begin orbital bombardment," he ordered. "If we cannot control them, we will burn them out." The crystal ships moved into position around Earth. Their massive weapons turned toward the blue and green world below. Beams of pure energy lanced down from orbit, turning cities into glass and oceans into steam. But Earth had been preparing for this moment. Deep beneath the surface, humanity had built a network of bunkers, tunnels, and underground factories. When the bombardment began, 60 billion people disappeared into the planet's crust like insects hiding from the rain. Colonel Isil Gayung found herself in command of the Seoul defense sector when the bombing started. The city above her was gone, turned into a crater of molten rock and twisted metal. But beneath the ruins, the subway tunnels had become command centers, and the underground shopping malls had become weapons factories. "Status report," she called to her staff officers. "All surface installations are destroyed, ma'am, but the underground network is intact. We have power, communications, and manufacturing capability." Gayung nodded grimly. The human leadership had learned from history. When facing a superior force, you didn't fight them in the open. You went underground and made them dig you out piece by piece. Dr. Minseok Dong-hae had lost everything in the bombardment. His wife, his children, his laboratory, all turned to ash in the first wave of attacks. But he was still alive, and he still had work to do. In a converted subway station beneath the ruins of Seoul National University, he worked with salvaged pieces of alien technology. The Velthon power systems operated on principles that human science had never achieved: quantum field manipulation, gravitational engineering, energy states that existed in 11 dimensions. "It should be impossible," he muttered to himself, as he connected alien crystals to human computers. But they make it work somehow. His assistant, a young graduate student named Nabi Sanwoo, handed him another piece of wreckage. "Professor, look at this. The crystal structure isn't random. It's following mathematical patterns." Dong-hae examined the fragment under his improvised microscope. Sunwoo was right. The alien technology wasn't just advanced, it was elegant. Every component served multiple functions, and the whole system worked together like a symphony of physics. "If we can understand the pattern," he said slowly, "maybe we can replicate it. Or better yet, maybe we can break it." Above ground, the Velthon forces had begun landing operations. Massive dropships descended through Earth's atmosphere, carrying troops and war machines designed to root out the human survivors. But they quickly discovered that occupying Earth was very different from destroying it. The humans fought like ghosts. They appeared from hidden tunnels, struck at alien patrols, and vanished back underground before the Velthon could respond. Every building that still stood had been turned into a fortress. Every piece of rubble hid sensors and weapons. Commander Taemin coordinated the global resistance from a captured alien cruiser. It had taken 3 months of desperate fighting to board and capture the ship, but now humanity had access to Velthon technology from the inside. "The aliens are learning to adapt to our tactics," he reported to the underground command centers. "But we're learning faster. The human crew of the captured ship was a mixture of soldiers, engineers, and scientists who had learned to operate alien systems through trial and error. Most of them had died during the learning process, but the survivors had become something new, humans who could think like aliens when necessary. Engineer Seojin had moved his operation to the captured ship's engineering section. Surrounded by crystal computers and energy conduits that hummed with power, he worked to understand how the Veilthon fleet stayed coordinated. "I've found it," he announced during one of their daily briefings. "The quantum communication network has a central hub. If we can locate and destroy it, their entire fleet will lose coordination." "Where is it?" Taemin asked. "The flagship. The same ship that Captain Minhyuk tried to ram." Dr. So-Young had established a research station in an abandoned mine shaft in Australia. Her team was working with captured Veilthon biotechnology, trying to understand how their living ships functioned. "They're not just machines," she explained to her assistants. "They're organisms. They eat, they grow, they reproduce. And like all living things, they can get sick." She held up a vial of green liquid, Veilthon ship fluid that they had harvested from battle wreckage. "If we can create the right virus, we might be able to infect their entire fleet." The work was dangerous. Several researchers had died from exposure to alien biology. But desperation drove them forward. Humanity was losing the war of attrition. For every alien soldier they killed, 10 humans died. They needed a weapon that could level the playing field. Admiral Thornspire was growing. Frustrated with the pace of the occupation, his forces controlled Earth's surface, but the humans continued to resist from below. Worse, they were becoming more effective over time. His casualty reports showed an alarming trend. The primitives were learning to use captured Veilthon weapons against their creators. "How long to complete the cleansing operation?" he asked his ground commander. "Unknown, sir. The humans have created an extensive tunnel network. We estimate it will take several years to clear them all." Years. Thornspire had never spent years on a single operation. The other species had been eliminated in weeks or months at most. These humans were proving to be uniquely stubborn. "Perhaps we should simply sterilize the planet," he suggested. "Use plasma bombardment to melt the crust." "Sir, that would destroy the mineral resources we came to harvest." That was the trap the Empire had fallen into. They wanted Earth's rare elements, which meant they couldn't simply crack the planet open. They had to dig the humans out carefully, preserving the resources while eliminating the population. But the humans had figured this out too. They were using the Empire's greed against them, forcing the aliens to fight on human terms. In the tunnels beneath London, specialist Sun Wu made a breakthrough that would change the war. She had been studying the quantum communication network, trying to find weaknesses they could exploit. "The network operates on entangled particles," she explained to her team. "But the entanglement can be broken if we hit it with the right frequency." "What frequency?" asked Dr. Donghae, who had traveled from Seoul to see her work. "That's the beautiful part." Sun Wu smiled. "Any frequency, as long as it's completely random. The Veilthon system expects order and predictability. Chaos is its weakness." The plan that emerged from this discovery was as simple as it was dangerous. A small team would infiltrate the alien flagship and plant a device that would broadcast pure quantum noise into their communication network. The chaos would spread through the entire fleet, breaking their coordination and leaving them vulnerable. Commander Taemin volunteered to lead the mission. He had been fighting the aliens longer than anyone, and he understood their patterns better than most. But as he prepared for what would likely be a one-way trip, He thought about what humanity had become. 6 months ago, they had been explorers and dreamers, reaching for the stars with hope in their hearts. Now they were killers and saboteurs, hardened by loss and driven by the need for survival. The aliens had made them into something darker and more dangerous than they had ever intended to be. But they were still human, and humans had never learned how to give up. 6 months after the first alien ship appeared in Earth's sky, Commander Taman led a strike team through the maintenance tunnels of the captured Velthon cruiser. The plan was insane, but sanity had died with the first bombardment of Earth. Now they had only desperate courage and the knowledge that failure meant extinction. "Remember," he whispered to his team, "we get one chance at this. If the quantum disruptor doesn't work, we won't live long enough to try again." Behind him, Dr. Donghae carried the device they had built from salvaged alien technology and human ingenuity. It was ugly compared to Velthon engineering, a crude box of wires and crystals that looked like it might explode at any moment. But it would broadcast pure chaos into the alien communication network, and sometimes chaos was the most powerful weapon of all. Far above Earth's atmosphere, Overlord Veltharix arrived with reinforcements from the Velthon High Command. His massive dreadnought dwarfed even Admiral Thornspire's flagship. He had come to investigate how an extermination mission had become a siege. "Report," he commanded, as he materialized on Thornspire's bridge in a shimmer of blue light. The local species is proving more resilient than expected, Thornspire replied carefully. "They have adapted our technology for their own use and established an effective resistance network." Veltharix studied the tactical displays showing the current state of the occupation. Red zones marked areas of active human resistance. They covered most of the planet. "You have failed," the Overlord said simply. "This should have been completed months ago." "They are unlike any species we have encountered," Thornspire protested. "They learn and adapt at an impossible rate. Their tactics are chaotic and unpredictable." "All species are chaotic before they are eliminated." But even as Veltharix spoke, he could see the reports that troubled him. The humans were not just resisting, they were improving. Their weapons were becoming more effective. Their tactics were becoming more sophisticated. And somehow, they had captured and operated Velthon vessels. On Earth, Admiral Byung-ho Kangmin commanded a fleet that no longer belonged to any one planet or species. 17 captured alien ships now flew alongside the remaining human vessels, crewed by survivors who had learned to think in new ways. "Status report," he called from the bridge of his flagship, a converted Velthon battle cruiser that the crew had renamed Defiance. "All ships report ready for the assault, sir," his tactical officer replied. "The underground factories have completed the new weapon modifications." Kangmin nodded. Human engineering couldn't replicate alien technology, but it could improve it, in ways the original designers never intended. Where the Velthon built elegant, efficient systems, humans added redundancy, adaptability, and the kind of creative chaos that made their enemies' computers crash. "Signal the ground teams," he ordered. "Operation Prometheus begins in 1 hour." In the tunnels beneath what used to be New York, engineer Seojin put the finishing touches on his masterpiece. The quantum torpedo he had designed violated several laws of physics and most principles of safe engineering. It operated on all frequencies simultaneously until the moment of impact, when it collapsed into whatever frequency would do the most damage. "Are you sure this will work?" asked his assistant, eyeing the device nervously. "No," Seojin admitted, "but I'm sure the old approach wasn't working." That had become humanity's philosophy. When faced with impossible odds, try impossible solutions. It had kept them alive this long. Dr. So-Young had moved her research team to a hidden facility in the Sahara Desert, where they worked with samples of Valthon biotechnology. The breakthrough had come when they realized that the alien ships were not just alive, they were part of a larger organism that spanned the entire fleet. "It's like a nervous system," she explained to her team. "Each ship is a nerve cell in a vast brain, but nervous systems can be poisoned." The virus she had created was elegant in its simplicity. It didn't try to destroy the alien ships directly. Instead, it confused them, making them think they were receiving contradictory orders from their fleet command. Confusion was humanity's greatest weapon. The Valthon Empire had conquered the galaxy through perfect order and coordination. But humans excelled at creative disorder, and they were teaching the aliens that chaos could be just as powerful as control. Commander Taemin's strike team reached the flagship's communication center after 3 hours of careful infiltration. The chamber was a cathedral of crystal and light, with quantum processors that hummed with the voices of the entire fleet. "Plant the device," he whispered to Dr. Dong-Hae. "We have maybe 5 minutes before they detect us." Dong-Hae connected their crude disruptor to the alien network. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the chamber filled with a sound like breaking glass as the quantum noise began to spread through the communication system. Admiral Thornspire felt the moment when his fleet lost its voice. One by one, the ships under his command went silent, as the chaos virus infected their communication network. Without coordination, his perfect battle formations began to drift apart like leaves in the wind. "What is happening?" Overlord Veltharix demanded. "The communication network is compromised," Thornspire replied, fighting to keep the panic from his voice. "We're receiving contradictory signals from all our ships." "Fix it." "We're trying, but the interference is unlike anything we've encountered. It's pure chaos. There's no pattern to counter." That was when the human fleet struck. Admiral Kangman's 17 captured ships appeared from behind Earth's moon, their weapons modified with human engineering that turned elegant alien designs into crude but effective killing machines. The Valthon ships tried to respond, but without coordination, they could not form their usual defensive patterns. Each ship fought alone, and one ship alone was vulnerable to the kind of coordinated attacks that humans had perfected through months of desperate warfare. "Target the command ships. First," Kangmin ordered, "cut off their heads and the body will follow." The battle lasted 8 hours. When it was over, the Valthon fleet was broken. Half their ships were destroyed and the rest were scattered across the solar system, their crews struggling to restore communication while fighting off constant human attacks. But the real victory came from Earth itself. As the alien fleet fell into chaos, the human resistance emerged from their tunnels like antibodies responding to an infection. Every captured Valthon position was overrun. Every alien patrol was hunted down and eliminated. Captain Minhyuk, whose sacrifice had started the chain of events that led to this moment, would have been proud to see his people fighting not just for survival, but for victory. The tide of war had turned, but the cost was visible in every human face. They had been forced to become something harder and more dangerous than they had ever wanted to be. The galaxy had tried to exterminate them and instead had created a species that would never again allow genocide to succeed. Dr. So-Young looked up from her laboratory at the reports coming in from around the world. The Valthon occupation was crumbling, but the victory felt hollow. Earth was a burned wasteland, Billions were dead. The species that had dreamed of peaceful contact with the stars had been forged into something else entirely. "What have we become?" she asked her assistant. "Survivors," came the reply. "And maybe that's enough." But So-young wasn't sure if survival was enough anymore. The humans had learned to fight like their enemies, and she wondered if they would ever be able to stop fighting long enough to remember what they had been fighting for. Above Earth, the scattered remnants of the Veilthon fleet tried to regroup. But they were no longer fighting primitive humans with crude technology. They were fighting humans who had learned to think like aliens while keeping the chaotic creativity that made their species unique. And for the first time in 3,000 years, the Veilthon Empire was losing. 3 years after the first Veilthon ship entered Earth's solar system, Admiral Byung-ho Kangmin stood on the bridge of the captured Imperial flagship. The massive vessel had been renamed Justice, though justice seemed too small a word for what was about to happen. Through the crystal viewports, he could see the remnants of the once mighty Veilthon fleet. 50 ships where there had been 200, battle-scarred hulls that leaked atmosphere and green fluid, crews that jumped at shadows and flinched when human voices came over their communication channels. "Incoming transmission from the Veilthon. High Command," his communications officer reported. "Put them through." Overlord Veltherix appeared on the main screen, though he looked nothing like the proud commander who had arrived to crush humanity's resistance. His crystalline features were cracked with stress lines, and his silver robes were stained with the evidence of defeat. We wish to discuss terms," the alien leader said, his voice barely above a whisper. Kangmin studied the creature that had ordered the death of his world. "There are no terms. There is only surrender. You cannot defeat the entire empire. We have thousands of worlds, millions of ships." "Had," Kangmin corrected. "You had those things. But empires built on the bodies of conquered peoples tend to fall apart when someone shows them they can be beaten." It was true. The liberation of Earth had been just the beginning. As word spread that the mighty Veilthon Empire could be defeated, the 47 species they had enslaved began to rise up. Each rebellion was led by human advisors who taught them the lessons learned in Earth's tunnels and burned cities. Dr. Min-seok Dong-hae entered the bridge carrying a briefcase that contained the Veilthon Empire's death warrant. Inside were the technical specifications for humanity's new quantum arsenal, weapons that could tear apart the fabric of space itself. "The device is ready," he reported to Kangmin. "One ship, one target. The Veilthon homeworld will be uninhabitable for 1,000 years. Dong-hae had lost everything to the alien invasion: his family, his home, his faith in the peaceful nature of the universe. In return, he had gained the knowledge to build weapons that could crack planets like eggs. It seemed like a fair trade. Broadcast this message to every Veilthon ship and every world in their empire," Kangmin ordered his communications officer. "Tell them they have 1 hour to begin full withdrawal from all occupied systems. Tell them they have 1 day to provide us with the locations of every enslaved world and every prison camp. Tell them they have 1 week to begin paying reparations for the damage they have caused." "And if they refuse?" asked Commander Taman, who had returned from his successful mission with scars that would never heal and eyes that had seen too much. "Then, we demonstrate what humans do to species that commit genocide." The ultimatum was broadcast across the galaxy. On 1,000 worlds and 1,000,000 ships, the Veilthon Empire heard the voice of a species they had tried to exterminate. The primitives who had barely mastered fusion power were now dictating terms to the masters of the galaxy. Some Valthon commanders tried to resist. Their ships became expanding clouds of superheated plasma when they encountered humanity's new weapons. Dr. Donghei's quantum torpedoes didn't just destroy enemy vessels. They erased them from existence, leaving behind empty spaces where matter used to be. The Valthon High Command surrendered completely after witnessing the destruction of their third fleet. 1,200 ships reduced to nothing in the space of an hour. Their perfect military technology, refined over millennia of conquest, was helpless against weapons built from desperation and powered by the fury of the dispossessed. Dr. Nari So-Young found herself in charge of the largest diplomatic mission in human history. Her job was to make contact with the liberated species and help them build new governments. It was the work she had always dreamed of doing, peaceful contact between civilizations. But the galaxy she found was nothing like the one she had imagined in her peaceful theories. Every species bore the scars of Valthon occupation. Every world was a graveyard of murdered cultures and extinct peoples. The Empire had been thorough in their cruelty. How many? She asked her aide as they reviewed the reports from the liberated worlds. 47 species enslaved. Over 300 completely exterminated. Thousands of worlds stripped of resources and left as dead rocks. So-Young stared at the numbers until they became meaningless. The Valthon Empire had been a machine for turning living worlds into raw materials. They had operated for 3,000 years, and their efficiency had been terrifying. "What do we do with them?" her aide asked. "The Valthon, I mean. We can't just execute an entire species." "Can't we?" So-Young replied, her voice as cold as space between stars. "They never hesitated to execute others." But even as she spoke, she knew they wouldn't follow that path. Humanity had been changed by the war, hardened and scarred and made into something more dangerous than they had ever intended to be. But they were still human. They could still choose mercy over vengeance. The choice they made would define what kind of species they became. Captain Jinwoo Minhyuk's sacrifice lived on in the name of humanity's first exploration fleet beyond the former Imperial borders. The Minhyuk led a dozen ships into unexplored space, carrying a message to any species that might mistake humanity for easy prey. The message was simple. We did not choose this war. We did not want this transformation. But we survived it, and we remember it. They had become the galaxy's new guardians, whether they wanted the job or not. Every world that had suffered under Valthon rule looked to them for protection. Every species that had been enslaved expected them to prevent it from happening again. Engineer Seojin designed the new ships that would patrol the galaxy's trade routes. They were ugly by Valthon standards, crude, overbuilt, and covered in redundant systems that made no aesthetic sense. But they were reliable, adaptable, and crewed by people who understood that sometimes the universe required ugliness to maintain beauty. "They're not exploration vessels," he explained to his design team. "They're warships disguised as peacekeepers, because peace only exists when someone is strong enough to enforce it." The galaxy had learned a new truth about humanity. They were no longer the innocent species reaching for the stars with wonder in their hearts. They had become something else, something forged in the fires of near extinction and tempered by the responsibility of victory. Admiral Kang Min's final report to Earth Command was brief. "The Valthon Empire has ceased to exist. All enslaved species have been liberated. Human expansion fleets are establishing monitoring stations throughout former Imperial space. The galaxy is free, but freedom requires eternal vigilance. The report didn't mention the cost. 4 billion human lives. Most of Earth's surface rendered uninhabitable. An entire species forced to evolve from dreamers into warriors in the space of 3 years. But the galaxy was learning what happened when someone tried to exterminate humanity without warning or mercy. They discovered that mercy was not weakness, but a choice made by those strong enough to survive without it. The Valthon Empire had sent a fleet to crush Earth, seeking only obliteration. Instead, they had created their own destroyer, a species that would never again allow genocide to succeed anywhere in the galaxy. Humanity had not just survived first contact, they had conquered it, and in doing so, they had become the galaxy's reluctant guardians. They carried the sword that cut down empires and the shield that protected the innocent. They had learned the universe's hardest lesson. Sometimes survival requires becoming something you never wanted to be. But they had also learned something else. That what you become depends on the choices you make after the fighting is over. The war was finished, but the real test of humanity's character was just beginning. They would spend the next 1,000 years proving whether they deserved the power they had taken from their would-be exterminators. The galaxy watched and waited to see what kind of guardians they would become.